There's been a lot of nervous chatter lately about the looming demise of the noble, majestic storyboard artist. Since the beginning of last year, AI has been rampaging across the creative landscape, obliterating everything in its path. Like an overzealous Japanese man in a rubber giant lizard costume. Is it racist? Nah. Does this spell the end to a profession that has been so good to me? Have you already missed the boat? Are storyboard jobs going to start to disappear faster than Marty McFly's older siblings? Welcome back, Connor, to Ink and Grow Rich, YouTube's premier storyboarding channel. In today's episode, I'm going to give you my thoughts on this very topic, and I'm going to strive to put aside my own personal hopes and desires, instead give you the most honest and ideally unbiased answer to that question possible. Let's start by getting some answers straight from the horse's mouth, shall we? When asked, realistically speaking, how do you think AI and the crazy amount of rapidly evolving image generators will affect the future of artists who draw live-action storyboards for a living? Will it make us obsolete? ChatGPT gave us this rather blowhardy response. The integration of AI into the creative industries is indeed transforming how art is produced, including storyboarding. However, rather than making live-action storyboard artists obsolete, these techniques are more likely to augment the creative process, offering tools that can streamline certain tasks, enable new forms of expression, and open up fresh avenues of storytelling. Perplexity AI, my personal favorite by the way, had this to say on the topic. AI is revolutionizing the field of storyboarding for film and television by enhancing efficiency and quality. While AI can assist in creating detailed and visually appealing storyboards, it cannot replace the creative thinking and the emotional impact that humans bring to the process. Despite AI's advancements, human creativity and unique ideas are essential for creating engaging and authentic storyboards that resonate with audiences. Fair enough. Gemini chimed in with this response. The most likely scenario is that AI becomes a storyboard artist's tool, not a replacement. Imagine using AI to generate basic layouts and then refining them with your unique touch, focusing on creative aspects and collaborating with directors. Overall, a rather rosy and optimistic forecast. However, it's hard not to get a to serve mankind, it's a cookbook vibe when taking advice from the AI. So, I figured we take into consideration the thoughts and opinions of some independent third parties who, let's just say, have fewer dogs in this fight. When Googling the same phrase, a number of articles spring up, as this has been a rather hot topic lately. Scott Belsky at Adobe says, I believe that AI will not replace artists, but instead will become a powerful tool that augments the creative process. It will help artists to be more productive, to explore new ideas, and to push the boundaries of what's possible. Kevin Moraine, a writer of Forbes, says, AI will not replace artists, but it will change the nature of art and the role of the artist. AI will be a collaborator and a tool that allows artists to explore new creative territories. Helena Serin, artist and AI researcher, AI is a tool just like a paintbrush. It's not going to make anyone a great artist overnight, but it does open up new possibilities for those who are willing to learn and experiment with it. So again, the general message being put forth appears to be some variation of nothing to be alarmed at. Not only is artificial intelligence not going to steal your job, in fact, it's soon going to become your newest, bestest buddy. But I have other thoughts, and I am far from alone. Carla Ortiz, board member of Concept Art Association. AI-generated art is a threat to the livelihoods of artists everywhere. It is only a matter of time before studios and clients opt for the cheaper, faster option, putting countless artists out of work. Kelly Bastel, illustrator and comic artist. As an artist, it's hard not to feel like AI is coming for our jobs. If machines can create art faster and cheaper than humans, where does that leave us? And finally, some artists with the unfortunate name of Wally Crabapple. AI art is the logical endpoint to the content mill model, where creativity is reduced to a commodity that can be churned out by machines. It's a grim prospect for anybody who values the unique perspective and skill of human artists. To those of you who might be feeling like this is all just a whole lot of fear-mongering, I'd like to ask you this one question. When was the last time you chose to be kind and rewind? I imagine it was sometime immediately after dropping off your roll of Kodak film, got the 24-hour photo developer. See, history is riddled with the corpses of once giant industries which were decimated by sudden technological advancements. In the early days of the 20th century, the ice trade was a booming business. Now, the reason the Iceman isn't popping by your house and trying to bang your mom every morning is because sometime around 1928, a chap named Thomas Midgley discovered Freon. Soon after, the refrigerator came along and was kind enough to put 90,000 people out of business. Around the same time, switchboard operators were connecting over 100,000 calls every hour. When the invention of the automatic switching system took over in the early 20s, over 350,000 people found themselves without a job. Hell, just in the film industry alone, there used to be title writers who put out of work when synchronized sound gave birth to the talkies. Film splicers were replaced with desktop editing programs like Premiere, Final Cut Pro. In fact, just 10 years ago, there existed a job called set illustrator. This job was to painstakingly hand draw detailed sketches of proposed sets. Then along came software called SketchUp, which enabled anybody to create 3D set designs in a matter of minutes. And poof, just like that, the set illustrator role vanished. So, sadly, the idea of storyboard artists becoming a long-dead career of the past, it's not incomprehensible. While it may be tempting to dismiss AI concerns as alarmist, the truth is that technological disruption is a very real and powerful force. Industries once deemed indispensable can and do get toppled. The question is, will storyboarding be next on the chopping block? Before we all start packing up our markers, let's just take a step back and gain a little perspective. Now, I've been doing this gig for almost 30 years now, and this is far from the first time that I have heard people ringing the death knell for the storyboard artist. Back in 1997, when Photoshop began to dominate the market and artists started coloring digitally, many proclaimed this was the end for the storyboard artist. I mean, why would anybody need us when computers could do the job? In the early 2000s, when digital cameras first became widely accessible, suddenly the consensus was that directors would just take their cameras on tech scouts, create photoboard, rendering traditional storyboarding useless. And truth be told, a handful of directors did stop using storyboard artists. Ultimately, there were just a few drops in the bucket. Today, I thank God for digital cameras because directors routinely give me photos taken on location and they say, hey Vinny, just trace that. I even remember when TiVo first hit the scene. You kids today will know as DVR. Everybody started freaking out and predicting the end of commercial storyboarding. And the logic was that nobody would bother filming commercials anymore, now that people could just simply fast forward past them. The same panic resurfaced years later when streaming services came along with a subscription model replacing the old advertising one. Yet, here we are. 3 decades later, storyboard artists are still very much in demand. Each time, the tools and the landscape change, but the core need for our skills remains. We adapted, we evolved, and in most cases, like with digital cameras and Photoshop, the new technology was folded into the clever artist's workload and enabled us to work faster, create better art, and to produce more of it in the same amount of time. Ultimately, we found ways of integrating these new technologies into our workflow. So, while AI does present new challenges and uncertainties, perhaps we can find some solace in knowing that our demise has been greatly exaggerated in the past. Look, I get it. Back in November of 2022, when I first became aware of just how capable these AI art programs were and the blistering speed at which they were evolving, I was gripped with terror. To me, the repercussions were so earth-shattering, it made Fat Man and Little Boy look like a couple of farts in an old Japanese man's bathtub. Was it racist? Nah. Watching the journey rip up image after image, I felt like a middle-aged man sitting in a doctor's office hearing the word inoperable. This isn't something I've spoken about on this channel, but I was born into a very low-income situation. You kids today call it poverty. I grew up on welfare and vividly remember buying food with booklets of colorful food stamps. But by spending decades, literally decades, honing my craft, I was able to pull myself up into the top 4% of earners in this country. My skills as a storyboard artist, they're one thing I have that I feel elevates me. Honestly, I'd go as far as to say the one thing I have that defines me. And now I wake up and suddenly everybody has the same ability. Everybody now has the powers of Superman. They didn't even have to work for it. I spent the first week of 2023 in a mild but constant state of panic. I had to sit my wife down at the kitchen table and say to her, look, I may be out of work soon. She stopped for a moment and then asked,
okay, without exaggerating, just tell me, how bad is it?
Honestly, I think maximum, I've got 2 years left in this industry. And the only reason I gave myself that long was because, let's face it, I'm a rock star. I'm in the top 2% of commercial storyboard artists working today, so I'll be sucking up the last few drops of water as the lake evaporates around me. But for the average storyboard artist, I figured 6 months max. The good news? It was just about 2 years ago. And in that time, we've had 2 major unions go on strike, another 2 threatened to, and despite all of that, I've never been busier. When I was 18 years old, this would be about 1988, I got my first job working at a t-shirt silk screening company. The position I got hired for was paste up and mechanicals artist. Back in the day, paste up and mechanicals artists were responsible for creating physical layouts for print advertising known as paste ups. If you wanted to spell out grand opening, you'd get a master sheet of your font, photocopy it, cut out each letter one by one, arrange them on the board, and then glue them into place. Completed pages were called mechanicals. It was a tedious, painstaking process that involved cutting, gluing, and avoiding ink smudges. There was no undo key to rescue you. If you got a thumbprint on that master, you had to start the whole miserable process all over again.
Why would anyone want this shit job?
Because it was considered to be a way in, an entry-level position offered to young aspiring artists who were eager to get their careers off the ground and were dumb enough to think this position would actually do that. Then one day, sometime around 1990 or so, a little program called Adobe Photoshop came along. Suddenly, you could do it in about 3 minutes what it normally would have taken you 4 or 5 hours to complete. And just like that, the position of paste up and mechanicals artist was essentially eradicated. Photoshop was to the paste up and mechanicals artist what the Chicxulub asteroid was to the dinosaurs.
So you could make the argument that this is a perfect example of a superior technology coming along and forcing a job title into extinction. Except that's not exactly what happened. Photoshop did not go on to become known as the Dream Crusher. It didn't go down in history as the destroyer of ambitions. It was a liberator. I want that fucking job, nobody did.
All the poor chumps like me who toiled the day away while contemplating just how long one would need to keep their head in an oven before being granted the sweet release of death, we were suddenly freed up to start learning this new tool called Photoshop. See, this new technological breakthrough still required somebody to operate it, and the smarter of the newly obsolete artists, we embraced it. The job title of paste up and mechanicals did die, but it gave birth to a new title called computer graphics artist. You see, those artists weren't forced into an extinction. They were forced into an evolution. Okay, getting back to our central question. Will AI replace the live-action storyboard artist? Now, we've heard from the optimists who feel like AI is going to make the artist's life easier, and we've heard from the pessimists who feel like the replacement is inevitable. Now, allow me to give you my personal opinion on both these points of view. I will start with the optimist. As we just determined, the one universal pushback on the fears surrounding AI is the notion that AI will become a handy-dandy tool which is going to make the lives of artists everywhere just full of rainbows and gumdrops. As the thieves working as airport luggage handlers like to say, let's unpack that. There are tons of similar articles to be found on Yo Googler, but for the sake of me expressing my views, let's just examine this piece written by a site called The Wrap. The Wrap has canvassed the opinion of artists working in various industry roles and broadly concludes that AI will be widely adopted as a tool, but with humans still in charge of the creative process. The problem with this rosy view of the future is what they are neglecting to mention, and that is the fact that although AI will be a tool with a human still in charge, the reality is that this could be any human. See, currently you need a talented human, somebody who's put in their 10,000 hours. As artists, our talent is what makes us valuable. I'd say 60% of my job is working with an individual who knows what he wants, but he simply doesn't have the skill to draw it. And why would he need to hire me if he can simply fire up the AI and tell that what he wants? Using AI for previs and storyboarding is widely anticipated to be a benefit to getting productions greenlit and then into photography. Again, the statement is structured to sound positive, and it is positive if you're the guy trying to get the project greenlit, but it sucks if you're the storyboard artist who just sidestepped in order to get there. Instead of having storyboards that look like sketches or pen and ink, we're going to have storyboards that literally look like the scene from the movie. At the same time, we don't believe that AI will take storyboard artists' jobs away outright. Instead, see the technological advancement as an opportunity to help them to do their jobs better. Once again, the point they fail to address is that this tech will destroy the barrier to entry, meaning anybody will be able to create these boards. Right now, an estimated 5% of humans can draw at a professional level. Now, whether you like this fact or not, we, here in America at least, live in a capitalist society. And the fundamental formula that drives all of capitalism is supply versus demand. Prior to the arrival of AI, the demand for storyboard artists was high, but the supply, as we just determined, was extremely limited. When the demand vastly exceeds the supply, then the supply is deemed to have value, which is why I can charge $1,100 a day. But what happens when the supply suddenly increases 1 billion-fold? Now, we don't have to speculate, because believe it or not, this has actually happened at least once already. On a people don't realize this, but once upon a time, rubber was about as valuable as gold. See, back in the late 19th century, rubber came from only one source, and that was the para rubber tree, which grew only in certain parts of the Amazon basin. When the Industrial Revolution came along, demand for rubber spiked. Now, I'm not going to get into a whole story about the rubber barons of the Amazon, which was totally a thing, by the way, but suffice it to say, they held a stranglehold on the production of rubber and they kept the costs high. The problem was Henry Ford needed that rubber for the tires of his Model T, and he didn't appreciate paying King's ransom for it. Apparently, Henry was not a guy he wanted to fuck with. After starting up his own rubber plantation in the Amazon and failing spectacularly at it, he decided to invest a small fortune in the development of synthetic rubber. By the time World War II came around, Ford, with the assistance of the US military complex, succeeded in creating synthetic rubber. Practically overnight, the value of rubber went from being on par with gold down to being on par with a handful of ice cubes. You can see where I'm going with this. When the supply of artists grossly outweighs the demand, then the skills you spent decades developing suddenly become about as useful as Anne Frank's drum kit. Now, I know I painted a pretty grim picture here. Before you go pawning your drawing tablet, let me share my personal take on this whole AI situation. It might just give you reason to hold on to those coping markers a little longer. Now, you've heard my counterpoints to the optimistic view of our future. Now I'll do the same with the street corner doomsday prophets. I can read a dozen more posts from artists who are predicting our demise, but they all come down to the idea that once the big fat money-hungry producers of the world realize they can replace storyboard artists with a computer program, they're all going to leap at the opportunity to save money, regardless of how many throats they cut. Maybe they're right and maybe they're wrong, but the fatal flaw in their argument is that they are assuming that AI cannot replace storyboard artists. After wasting all my precious energy glooming and dooming, I finally woke one day, decided to embrace my inner Sun Tzu, and get to know my enemy. Now, if you're not familiar with Sun Tzu, he's this little Asian guy that operates a karate studio over his laundromat in Koreatown. Great guy, but lousy driver. You racist? Nah. I eventually decided to roll my sleeves up, take a peek under the AI hood. I paid for subscriptions to a number of models, and then spent a year and a half playing around with Midjourney, DALL-E, Leonardo, Runway, ImageGen, ChatGPT's latest offering, and to a lesser degree, Stable Diffusion. And I'm sorry, but despite waking up every morning to an array of YouTube channels screaming at me that the latest AI is a game changer, the truth is they all fall ludicrously short of being able to do my job. I recently put Midjourney to the test, and I shot an entire video about the experience. And that eventually became part 2 in my 3-part AI series, and you can find a link to that video in the comment section below. But that does bring us full circle back to the central question. Can AI effectively do the job of a live-action storyboard artist? Not a chance in hell. At least not yet anyway. Currently, AI simply has too many limitations. Now you could make the argument that it's advancing rapidly, and maybe in 5 years it could surpass us. But is that also true about just about every other career on the planet? I personally do not believe that a live-action storyboard artist is in any immediate danger of being replaced by artificial intelligence. You don't believe me? Well, no need to take my word for it. Let's ask the world's first, and in my opinion, still the greatest commercially available artificial intelligence on the planet. Magic 8 Ball. Is AI going to replace the live-action storyboard artist? Maybe there have been several minor improvements. Alright, I think that's just about going to be it for today's episode. Wow, was that a big one? It was so big that originally this video came in at 1 hour and 40 minutes. Realizing that absolutely nobody was going to watch it, I decided to dice it up into 3 separate videos. So my next video, you can watch me try to bang out a job using only ChatGPT and Midjourney, and in the 3rd part of the series, you can hear my thoughts on the question of ethics. If you have any questions about what we covered here today, or just want to tell me how much you hate me, drop on down to the comment section below and hit me up, Buttercup. And as always, if you found this video insightful or entertaining and would like to see more of them in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below. And to all my Asian viewers out there, thanks for being able to take a joke. Until next time, this is Vinny Delay, Ink and Grow Rich.